Welcome to episode 48 of the POG Show, the Port Orange Government Podcast. I am your host, Mike Springer, the Public Information Officer for the City of Port Orange. And we are in the middle of the Atlantic hurricane season. Coming up, starts right here, June 1st. And with me in-house, we have our special guest, Port Orange Fire Rescue Chief Joe Wulfing. Chief, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me for this important topic that we do every year.
I know you look forward to this talk we do. And, you also have dual roles you play, right? You're not only the fire chief, but when we have an emergency situation, you take over as our emergency management incident commander there for the city. So a lot of people may not know what happens from the city's perspective during hurricane season. We have a storm coming off the coast. What are some of the things you have to do to get us ready from the city's side once you start seeing that we have a named system that may have some impacts here along the coast?
So we have guidelines in place that every year we've already started doing our hurricane planning and prepping. Even though the system or the storms began June 1st, we've started our prep months ago. So we do that through policies. We make sure all our policies are current and moving forward, that we're in the right direction we need to be, learning from the previous storms. But that's the biggest thing we start doing. And then we react to the storms as they start coming towards us. We know early if it's going to be a Gulf storm or if it's coming off the coast of Africa. The storms off the coast of Africa are the ones that seem to skirt us to the east, minimal impact, but the ones that form in the Gulf seem to have, over the past couple of years, seem to take that path of hitting Charlotte County, Lee County, and then traveling up to the state, and then hitting us. Usually almost the eye is usually over us or one of the counties surrounding us. That's been the pattern going on for the past couple of years, and we've adapted to that.
And you're usually there watching those storms, that path, coordinating with the county and their emergency management operations center, the city manager, trying to make sure we're all ready and prepared for that, whether we need to activate our emergency operations center. And then once that happens, you kind of take control there as the main liaison incident commander.
Yeah, so the county has a great emergency management program. They operate under the state. We report to them. We have a direct line of communication during storms. But they are our resource and our direct line to the state when it comes to communications, resources, and we work with them on a regular basis. And when we activate, when a storm or another event dictates that we need to open our EOC, it's usually in conjunction with Volusia County EOC. And we'll open it up. We'll bring back the vital departments for emergency response. And then we bring the non-essentials, what we call them. They're still essential, but we don't have to have them in the EOC, like the finance, HR, and getting all the policy sides of it working on it.
Right, because in that EOC, you're going to have your HR, you're going to have your finance, you're going to have your public works, you're going to have your public utilities, IT is going to be there, police are going to be there, fire, obviously, engineering. Everybody's going to kind of be there with their designated roles, whether it's, stormwater system management, whether it's our utility system, and you're kind of helping coordinate all that, making sure it all moves and flows together the way it needs to.
Yeah, so the role of the incident commander that myself and Chief Marino fill is basically we put everybody in the room, we start gathering the information from the fields, and then we start looking at what's going on. And we just coordinate that response based on what's happening. If a hurricane's going to be a rain event, we need to worry about our flooding. If it's going to be a wind, we need to worry about access to the roads and debris. So every storm's different, and but the responses are pretty much the same. We've run the gamut of storms over the past couple of years, from wind to rain. But we do train every year also to build on the hurricanes. Last year we did a cyber drill, which everyone knows everyone's trying to get into your systems to shut down your systems and hold at ransom. So we did a cyber drill last year in the EOC, and we simulated an attack on the city where we lost utility billing, HR services, stuff like that. And then how would we respond if we lose our computer systems? And it went well. We did well. We had an outside agency come in, and they graded us on our policies in place and how we adapted to the loss of infrastructure like that. So we did well on that one. This year we're going to do a hurricane response for our drill coming up real soon.
And that's the thing, is you're not just focused on hurricanes as the emergency management incident commander. You're doing all types of events, whether it's a wildfire, whether it's tornadoes. You're willing to respond to any kind of major catastrophe that's going to activate that emergency operations center that the city has to then respond to.
Yeah, it's definitely not just hurricanes. People think of EOC activations and we think hurricanes, but we'll do partial activations for tornadoes that come through. The brush fires, as you said, an active shooter would actually require some form of EOC activation. So there's a lot of reasons we open the EOC. Hurricanes are the number one reason and the longest duration.
And as you're preparing, for our hurricane season, we have some new residents who've moved in here, new people to the area. What are some tips or advice you want to give them so they can prepare at home this hurricane season before we have any kind of storm or system that may be a threat to us? What should we be doing right now?
So I always lean towards the fire side because I've been in the fire service since 1994, and that's really what I lean back on my experiences with storms, and I see how it impacts people through when they actually occur. I've already cut back my trees at my house. Don't wait until June 1st, or don't wait until we go under a hurricane warning. The city has ordinances in place against that. But if you can trim your trees now in anticipation, that's a huge benefit to yourself and the community, because we're not trying to deal with debris that becomes projectiles at that point in these storms. I also look at, from the fire service side, is back in 2004 when we lost power for a long time. We had a lot of residents hurting because of the lack of power. They didn't have enough medications to last that long, and their oxygen machines had no power, so they were going through the bottles. So that, from my standpoint, you have to take care of yourself in that sense. So get your medications at least 2 weeks. Know what type of machines that you use for your oxygen, breathing, CPAP, whatever it happens to be. Just know what your limitations are on that machine. Do you have to have power? Do you have access to a generator after the fact? Also, consider a special needs shelter registration. If you require electricity to run these machines to help you live, you need to be in a place where you can have access to electricity. And Volusia County Emergency Management would be the point of contact for registering for these special needs shelters.
And the county does a good job kind of putting that information out ahead of a storm when they activate the EOC, putting out, here are the local shelters, and then also, distinguishing, here's the pet-friendly ones, here's the special needs shelters, so people can find the right one for them. But I'm sure through your time that you've done this, there's a lot of people that are in those areas that are maybe susceptible to storms and in that voluntary evacuation zone, but they don't leave. Would you probably recommend that when you have a threat like that, if you're in a vulnerable spot, what should they do?
You need to have a plan in place prior to the storm. And that does happen a lot. A lot of people look at a storm and go, well, it's not going to be that bad. It's going to be 50, 60 mile an hour winds or maybe some rain. So they'll stick it out. And the issue is that they're fine during the storm, but after the fact, when we don't have the services up and running that they need, that's when we start getting the calls and saying, hey, we need help. Our ability to help at that point is very limited when it comes to power and food, stuff like that. We can provide emergency care. Of course, we can do that at any time during a storm. But it's the after effects. The lack of power, or when we lose power, that's when we start seeing and getting the phone calls from people saying, hey, we need help. We don't have this. So to avoid that, have a plan in place. And if you are relying on that type of power and stuff like that, you need to have a plan prior, and you probably need to evacuate and then just come back when everything's better.
You see a lot of people purchasing those generators now kind of ahead of hurricane season. What are some things they should keep in mind if they're going to be running a generator, after the storm hits, just to be safe?
Yeah, generators are great to have after the fact to run essentials that you need, but you also need to be careful because we all, not necessarily in Port Orange, but somewhere in Volusia County, we will have multiple deaths because of improper generator use. So Those deaths are caused by generators that are placed either in the home or right outside of a window, where the carbon monoxide from the generators goes into the home and then creates the issue that we're having in there. So well ventilated areas away from your home. They have solar powered generators now, which are very effective. So just figure out which one works best for you and make sure you understand how to use it.
And you probably want to test it ahead of hurricane season just to make sure it's running, functioning, and you got the fuel you need to make sure that it can go as long as you're going to need it to for that duration, probably at least a couple of days.
At least 72 hours we anticipate being without power. That's what we tell everyone. But building on, you have to have your gas prior to the storm. You have to have food. You have to have water. Your debit card is going to be useless when there's no power. So cash is going to be very important to have, what you can on there. Technology has improved. So, we have these chip readers that can operate off phones now to make payments, which is great, but still don't rely on that. You have to have cash in your hand when these storms hit.
You talked about some of the items there, but as people are putting together those hurricane kits, what should they put into it? What do you put in your hurricane kit?
So I've always been at work. I've never been at home during a hurricane since day one. So I've never had to actually personally have a plan other than I'm going to be at work and I'm going to be here probably for about 4 or 5 days straight. But I tell my family, we always evacuate because I can't worry about them when I can't leave work. So we have evacuation plans. And in Florida, you need to have a south plan and a north plan because you just never know what the storm's going to do. So if it's coming in at a certain direction, we're going to go this way. If it comes in over top of us, we're going south. So we have family and friends located in both of those directions. But, we also have dogs. So we have to get the medicine for the dogs. We have to get dog food. We have to find a place that will take the dogs. And then communication, because cell phones are not reliable when the system gets overwhelmed. So you have to have a backup form of communication so that realistically you're not probably going to be able to talk to your family or someone you need to during the storm, but have a backup plan in place and just to know they're safe.
And then having those kits ready with food, water, 1 gallon per person per day usually, making sure all your medication's there. And then what about, checking your insurance, making sure that's all up to date? How important is it to have those documents in place and updated before the storm?
Yeah, you got to have anything that insurance related type stuff like that. You got to have those hard copies with you. Relying on the electronic versions may not be the best way to go about that during situations where we lose power. So having everything, I would encourage having the hard copies. Also take pictures with your phone just in case something happens en route when you're evacuating.
Another thing I've seen people do lately is they buy those kind of outdoor solar lights, put them outside ahead of the storm, kind of charge them up and then use them inside to kind of light the areas because you'll lose power. But, I'm sure people should have some kind of flashlights or lanterns too, because as you mentioned, we're probably going to be without power for at least a few days.
Yeah, that's a good idea. With solar being as good as it is now with lighting and stuff like that, there are a lot of ways to have light and little power things like that without running a generator. The generators, as we talked about earlier, can have a little hazards. They're noisy. They're difficult to set up. But little stuff like that with the lights, that's just a good idea. That's good planning.
And also, if you got a grill, maybe make sure that's full of propane so you can cook if you have to do that, or have at least some non-perishable food too to use.
Yep, the propane grills are great. Always have an extra tank if you can, or at least take it to one of the fill stations and top it off before the storm. They usually last a while too, so they're effective.
Anything else, Chief, you want to touch upon, or anything else you think people should know as they get ready for hurricane season this year, and what they should do to stay prepared?
Well, we're actively out there working year-round, whether it's for the hurricane, the tornado, the flood event. From the fire department side, people, when we get these storms coming, we do all calls to where we staff extra fire trucks, extra ambulances. So we're ready to respond for the community. But what people don't realize is that we're responding during the storm. But when the storm passes and the winds start to die down, we go back out in what we call a windshield assessment. So if community members see us out in these times, what we're doing is we go to every neighborhood, every street, and we drive it. We're looking for damage. We're looking for people that are in need of our help because of loss of power, loss of cell phones. But the primary goal is to see what the impact of the storm is to the community. And do we have enough resources with police, fire, public utilities to handle what has happened? We've been lucky in the sense of we've never had to have state send in resources to help us with the basics. So that's what when you're seeing your fire trucks go through the community after your storms. We're not out there looking, for just a look. We're on a mission. We have a purpose, and we don't stop unless it's a life critical event. We just need to get these assessments done. So I just wanted the community to know you're going to see a lot of the police and the fire, and that's what we're doing. And it's a quick, systematic approach to a damage assessment throughout the community.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Chief, and thank you for all you do. And Mick, take us on out.